be a billionaire so freaking bad.
Hello, welcome. If you're just joining us, we're so glad you're here with us. And we're playing a fun song called Billionaire, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. And there's a good reason we're doing a song called Billionaire today. So I'm going to put a poll up for you, that all of you who are here today, and we're going to talk a little bit about money. So I'm going to launch this first poll. My question is, today we use bills or coins as money, but the items below, which one has not been used for money or currency in the past? Seashells, animals or animal skins, tea, candy, or water? You're going to meet Michelangelo Dooley in a minute, and he's our guest speaker today, and let's see if he knows the answer. I bet he does.
Let's see.
I bet a lot of you have talked about this in your classroom sometimes.
That's a tricky one.
Yep, I'm trying to trick them. Let's see if I had to look it up myself. I didn't know either, to be honest. Okay, I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and I'm going to share the results. Candy won out. The answer actually is number 5, water. To be honest with you, in the past, seashells, animals, animal skins, tea or tea bricks, as they call it, where they press the tea together. Candy even has been used for currency, but not water.
In some middle schools, candy may still be used as currency.
I think so too. So that's great. Well, I'm so glad you all are here today. I'm going to get started, and I'm going to welcome you all to our online series, CEO Chat. As you know, I just remind you each week that CEO stands for Career Exploration Opportunity. And our goal today is to do just that. With us, Michelangelo Dooley is joining us today. He's the first Vice President of Wealth Management with UBS Financial Services. And you just heard from him.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you. Happy to be here with all of you and speaking today.
Great. And I'm going to ask real quick, does anybody know what UBS stands for? Or what UBS Services is? If you know, throw it in the chat.
And it's not UPS.
Not UPS.
No cheating. It's not UPS. It's UBS.
UB, like boy, S. That's right. UBS, like Sean just put in there. And before we begin, I just want to remind everyone that we encourage your questions. Please use the Q&A chat box, not the actual regular chat box. And go ahead and throw them in there when you're ready, and we'll save them to the end. Oh, Luisana says Union Bank of Switzerland.
So
right?
So that actually, Union Bank of Switzerland was the name for a very long time. And then the firm went through a lot of mergers over time. And so UBS is actually now doesn't really stand for anything because we are just UBS. That is the name of the company. But most of the time, for many years, it was Union Bank of Switzerland. So that's right.
Good job. Very good job. Okay, so let's dive in. It's Michelangelo. Share with us about your background, where you were born and raised, your schooling, things like that.
Sure. So I was born in Chicago, actually a suburb of Chicago, Illinois. So I was a Bulls fan when I was a kid. I got to live through the Jordan era, for any of you that have kind of watched the recent documentary. I lived there until about 10 years old, roughly. So my early years were all in Oak Park, Illinois. And my brother, who's about 20 years older than me, lived in Florida. So for about middle school until high school, I lived in Homestead area. Those of you that are going to school down south, I grew up right in that area, and been in Miami pretty much since then. I left for a few years, did some work in New York, got to experience different lifestyle for a few years, went to New Jersey, and then ultimately moved back. So I'm in Coral Gables, Florida now, still very close to where all of you are, and this is where I've settled.
That's great. So you've seen a lot of different places, it sounds like. That's wonderful. So Michelangelo was just telling us about his upbringing, where he was born and raised, and how he got here to Florida. And now tell us a little bit about your career with UBS. How long have you worked for the company? And talk about your journey.
Sure. Yeah. And I think the journey is a big portion of it for all of us and all of you that have your own story to tell. So I'll actually start with the journey because I think that's important in getting to where I am today. I've been raised from a single mom. She actually, sewed off her back, worked as hard as she could. I actually was in after school care for elementary, all throughout elementary because my mom would work until about 6:30, and then I'd get picked up after that. So I understood the value of what we offer at, after school all-stars very early on. And then once we moved down to Florida, I've gone to public school throughout elementary, middle, and high school. So I went to a public school down here, Redland Middle School, for any of you that know it, and then Robert Morgan for high school, all in the area. Now, for college, I actually, and this is, I guess, part of that background, for college, I was supposed to go to University of Miami because my mom worked really hard when she was here and worked for University of Miami, which helped with tuition. You probably all know that tuitions for college is very expensive. But unfortunately, instead of getting accepted, I was goofing off in high school. My grades weren't the best, and I got rejected from a school that I could have gotten for free. So that was a big learning thing for me, kind of a reality check. And so what I did is I went to Miami-Dade for 2 years. Those of you that can see here, that is the Miami-Dade degree. So I got an AA from Miami-Dade, and then I transferred into University of Miami for my second 2 years, which is there. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell. I was lucky in that I worked from about 14 years old. I had jobs at Publix for about 3 years, and then I started working at Starbucks, and it was all very much a learning experience and responsibility. By the time I got to college, I managed to get an internship with UBS Financial Services. I was an analyst. I was doing Excel work, things on the computer, all different items that would be helpful just to some of the senior people that worked. And it transitioned from that internship into a full-time position up in New York. So upon graduating from University of Miami, I went up to New York for about 3 years to work for UBS in a rotational program. It's a great learning opportunity and something that I can't stress. The process that got me there, I think, was the jobs and the responsibility that I learned through college and the multiple jobs and everything else. So all of this to say that I've been about 10 years now with the same company, UBS Financial Services, and I've gone from being an intern to a financial advisor and advising clients, both big and small, on what to do with their money, how to manage their finances, how to retire, how to feed their kids and support their families, and ultimately some of the more exciting things like how to invest in stocks and things like Amazon and Nike and companies that you all like. Those all come with it. But yeah, it's been about 10 years now.
Oh, that's wonderful. So let me ask you, Michelangelo, you talked where you went to school. What kind of education, like what types of classes, what was your major, that type of stuff?
Right. So for the AA at Miami-Dade, I focused in business just to get a broad knowledge of what happens in business. What are the different parts? Redland Middle School's vocal. So what happens with business? And that really has pieces like marketing, finance, and then there's also just kind of general business courses. When I took that AA was really impactful because then I got to kind of learn where I wanted to focus rather than just business. And finance was something that interested me. For those of you that don't know, finance at a very basic level is things like, a checking account and a savings account and where you keep your money. At a more complicated level, it's investing in other things and trying to make your money work for you, right? You've all probably seen different things where it's once you make so much money, your money starts working for you. Well, that's what investing really is. So finance was where I had an interest, and I really enjoyed the work that was there. So
that's great. So tell us, what is a typical day like for you working with UBS and in finance?
Every day is different. It depends. That is one of the exciting things about being in the industry. So in our job, we speak with a plethora of clients that we work with on a regular basis. But how our day looks really depends on a few things, right? We could be working on a client with a special project and trying to help them understand something about their finances. Or we could be investing in the stock market. On some days, the stock market's not performing well and clients are calling us scared and worried because they're losing their money. So to give an example that all of you can kind of appreciate, let's say that your parents gave you $20 to go buy lunch, right? If you decided to invest the $20 and you lost it because what you invested in performed poorly and you only had $10 left, you might be a little concerned about that, right? That was your $20 that you could have used to buy whatever. So that same response is some of the emotions that we have from clients that may lose money in the stock market or may lose money from investments. And so we have to be there for them and basically discuss with them recommendations on what they should do. Every day is very different, right? Those conversations differ from person to person, and it's always something unique.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm sure, times like these, a lot of people are concerned with all that we're going through in our world. I mean, as everybody knows, we're just dealing with some huge challenges in our world, and not just in your industry, but everywhere, not only with the pandemic, but all of today's climate, the Black Lives Matter, the protests. Talk a little bit about how your industry may have changed with all the things that are going on in the world today and how you're dealing with it.
Yeah, it's, I would say from a physical, and I'll break these out into items, because from a COVID standpoint, this business was very much person to person. Oftentimes we would meet with people, we'd sit down, we'd go over things with them. And all that's had to change, right? We had a large team that would work together. On our team directly, we have about 11 people that work on our team. All of us were in the office that I'm in here. And now I'm the only one left in this office because the rest of our team is working from home. So there was an impact to personnel, right? Everybody's working in a very different way. Now, luckily, everybody still has jobs. We haven't needed to lay anyone off, but it's very different than the environment that they were used to working in. For clients, the conversations have changed. We used to meet in person. We could go out to lunch with people. We could sit down over coffee, but that's not as possible anymore, right? Now we have to have Skype calls and Zoom calls and a lot more phone calls with people just to discuss with them how their investments are doing, right? How's their money doing? And it's at a time when everyone cares about that more than ever, because if you just lost your job or you had a family member or someone that you knew that went through a hardship, you may be hurting financially. You may need your money, right? There may be more need for that. So you have a lot of people that are stressed about these things and asking questions. So it has changed. I'd say COVID has changed the environment in that way. The separate piece, and I would say with Black Lives Matter and protests and things like that, I think there's a lot of positives that have come out of that for this industry specifically. So historically, this finance industry is not a very diverse industry, especially in the United States. And this has brought added awareness to an area that historically there are things that are said that are being done, but action is always very difficult, right? It's hard, I think, to get progress so that we have diverse workspaces, so that we have people that are interested, that have a fair shot at the job. And that's something that's, I think, is changing, right? You're seeing a lot of attention to it from very senior levels in corporations, whether it be UBS or other companies.
That's so true. You really, it's like Martin Luther King. I mean, you have to stand up and take a stand and to make change happen, but do it in a positive way. And that's what's happening now, so that change can occur, necessary change. You were talking about how this affects the finance industry and your organization as well as ones like yours. Can you talk a little bit about the minority presence in your industry?
Yeah. It's not a lot, not as much as I personally would like to see, and I think a lot of our team, I'd say on a personal note, the team that I joined, that I moved back to Florida for, is a very diverse team. Surprisingly, we have multiple individuals of varied race on our team out of the 11 people that are here. Jewish, Black, Hispanic, just all across the board, we have diverse groups. But if you looked at the industry in a whole, it's not as much, right? That's not the case. Predominantly white community, and that's something that, like we said, I think there's more attention that's coming onto this. A lot of it stems from colleges. If you think about going to school and going to college, a lot of firms will want to hire from specific colleges because they know them. They know the people there, and there's this long chain of people that they hire. And that's where some of the issues start, right? So recruitment from different places and broadening the scope of who gets recruited and where they get recruited from is probably something that we'll see change in the next few years. But as of now, it's still very much, there's not a lot of diversity, not as much as there should be.
Well, you bring up a good point about college and the recruitments from college. How would you recommend that we make changes? Obviously, more recruiting has to be done. But for those that are in minority groups, whether it's African American, women, Hispanic, whatever groups, how would you say if they're interested in finance? Because you touched on it briefly before, that what you do is you help people manage their money. But you have to not only know about finance, you have to like working with people. You have to be there. I mean, money managers are the people that really you have to have a good relationship with. There's so many wonderful people in this world that are smart and can do this type of job, but they don't have the opportunity. So how can we make that better? Not just relying on the schools and the recruitments of the schools, but as individuals.
I'd say, a lot of that starts with all of you on the call. It's something, I'm a firm believer in opportunities. Everybody can get lucky to an extent, but when luck comes your way, you need to be prepared to take that luck. You need to be prepared with the education that you need, with the ambition that you need to seize on the moment. And, I'd say if you're interested in a role that you're speaking to people on a regular basis, or if you're very good with numbers and you like the concept of investing money and doing these things, business and finance are definitely a path that you should start learning about. If you go to school and you start learning finance and you get an education and a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in finance, that's a great first step. You keep your grades up, you make great contacts when you're at school, and you try to network where you can with people that may already be working in the space. But a lot of that starts with each one of us individually, right? And I think that's a very important thing, is that part of the reason we're doing all of these career exploration chats is so that all of you can get an idea for what these different careers are and say, you know what, I kind of like what that, I think I like what that is. Let me learn some more about that. And if you're passionate about it, someone that's interviewing you or someone that's working in the field that just comes across you is going to say, I see the fire in their eyes. I see the motivation in their eyes, and they'll want to help. So I really do think that it starts there, right? It starts with the passion from the individual and educating and staying motivated and showing a need to do these things. And if you can take that first step, then hopefully the rest will line up for you.
That's wonderful advice. Thank you. This is a good time to throw in my second poll, if that's okay. I'm going to jump into the poll number 2, and I'm going to ask everybody a question. So it's going to jump on your screen. Here we go. If you are financially literate, that means you, number 1, know how to handle your money that you earn. Number 2, understand how to create a budget. Number 3, know the difference between a savings account and a checking account. Or 4, all of the above. Tell us, what do you think it means when you are financially literate or financial literate? Does it mean you know how to handle your money or how to create a budget? That you know the difference between a savings account and a checking account? Or all of the above?
I think I'm far more financially literate than I am reading literacy.
Okay, so I'm going to end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. So if you are financially, wow, 82% responded all of the above. And that's right. Right. All 3 of these items on here are things that are basically finance education type items. How you handle your money, creating a budget, and checking and savings account. These are pretty basic concepts when it comes to finances. And I'd say the budget is especially important because each one of us, these are skills that we have to learn, right? We're all going to have, doesn't matter who you are, you're going to make some amount of money and you're going to have to figure out how you spend that money, whether it be for family or things you enjoy or whatnot. So a budget can be very simple in that you're managing how much you spend, or it can be very complicated to say, here's each one of my items and I want to know that I don't spend more than I need to. But these are all important concepts. It definitely is. And you know, the first big test is once you start college, especially for those that need to take school loans like I did, you know, it's for a good portion. They'll throw interest rates at you and they'll say all these different numbers and expect you to know them and expect you to understand it. And that's a hard thing. So take some time, you know, learn and educate yourself, even at a basic level. I think any type of financial literacy is important. Doesn't matter who you are. Have some basic understanding of things like interest rates and, you know, how much would I pay and all these types of things. It's an important concept.
And don't you think it's good if they have questions to go ask people? You could walk into a bank and ask somebody, couldn't you? You know, if you
absolutely, absolutely, right? Yeah. I would never shy away, even, and I hate to say that because not every parent even knows answers, you know, always the right way. But I think that's a great idea, is that if you have questions on things like this, you know, you go into a bank, you talk to a teller, you ask for basic financial education, and they should be able to help you with some of that, right? Don't be afraid to ask.
Right. That's true. Good advice. So tell me, what do you think is the best thing about your job? Because you don't actually hold all the money. I think some people think of the movie, you have millions of dollars and you throw them up and you lay in it. You don't get to do that.
I could sweep around the office right now and there's no mountains of dollar bills, though that sounds pretty interesting.
Wouldn't that
That's
be
an
fun?
idea we should work on.
So unfortunately, you can't do that, but what is the best thing about your job?
I think it's exciting. It's something that it's not easy to perfect or master, because investing specifically is something that everybody wants to be right and have the perfect answer, but no one truly knows the perfect answer, right? If people could predict what was going to happen in a stock, you know, let's say you love Apple and you love the iPhone and you want to invest in the company Apple. Well, if everybody could predict that your investment would double in 2 years, then they would do that. But no one truly knows. So there's a lot of research and a lot of things that go into it that you're not really certain about what the answer is going to be. Now, it doesn't matter how many years you've been doing this, you're never going to be perfect. So I think that's an interesting thing, is that there's always a challenge. There's always something to do to get better at what you're doing, whether it be researching, whether it be advising a client. There's always a way to get better and learn more. And that was really, really good for me, because I wanted something to keep me busy. I learned about myself early on that if I wasn't challenged, then I had less interest in it. And some of you may be the same way, right? If you're in school and you don't feel challenged, you may not be as interested in actually pushing yourself. And so this was a career that it pushed me, right?
Yeah, that's so true. And I think it's important that you also mentioned that you have to spend a lot of time researching and studying and always getting more education in everything you do. You're constantly learning. And I think that's the truth for a lot of careers out there. It's
that's
just
right.
Constant education. Yeah.
I can even speak. So the college after college, if you will, for me there was a 1.5 year where I had to study for a designation. It's basically, like you said, more credentials, right? Keep continuing the education beyond just college so that I could better serve clients and, people's financial needs. So this one right there, which is bigger than the other two, is a certified financial planner designation. And that's exactly what it sounds like, right? I'm certified to plan for financial needs that clients may have. And that goes to basic budgeting, like we talked about before, to thinking through things like an estate plan. If someone's going to pass away and they want to write a will to say, where do I want my assets to go and who do I want to gift them to? All of those things kind of lead into that. So that's all part of financial planning. But it's something that you always have to stay learning. I agree with you, right? You always have to learn, and you're always going to have to study and research and read. So.
Yes, that's so true. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you, what about the big one behind you, the big diploma behind you? So I'm so glad you told us. I was just about to ask that. So
no one's asked about that yet. I was waiting for someone to ask. Maybe that's in the questions. I'll wait.
You know what? It's true. Actually, I looked at it myself and I thought, we'll see if someone mentions it, because it's a pretty cool looking car right there.
That's right.
So this is a good time for us to go into the Q&A box and ask you some of the questions that came in from our attendees. So the first one wants to know, do you have to go to college to have this type of job? You did talk about the importance of college, but do you have to go to college?
So generally, yes. It depends on what you want to do in the industry, but I'd highly encourage it. So even in certain operational roles within this industry, you can get by with a 2-year, like an AA, right? And I talked about that. So for example, I went to Miami-Dade for 2 years and I got an AA, right? An AA degree. Now, you can do a lot of operational roles with an AA degree, but generally it's encouraged to get at least a bachelor's, if not even a master's degree, to do something in financial services. So that's a pretty, and like I said, right, if you really do have the eagerness to invest and do these things for people, then it's highly encouraged that you finish schooling, because in the third and fourth year of college is when you really learn about finance.
Perfect. Another question from Galaxy says, do you have to be a millionaire to invest?
No, actually, that is a very good question. So the answer is definitely no. Over the years, investing historically was something that people looked at as only very wealthy people do this. But over the years, we've seen even apps, right? And all of you have cell phones, and you've seen apps like there's certain ones out there that you can set up an investment account and invest for fairly low fees, right? And so the bar to invest is much lower, right? I have friends of mine that, they have $200-300 and they say, I'm going to go and invest this. Now, an important thing is it's a great experience to start investing when you're young, but you also want to do some research, right? My job exists as a financial advisor because many people don't understand how to research. And what you don't want to do is lose your money by investing in the wrong way. So I'm not recommending that everybody go and get a financial advisor, but you may want to at least do some research before you start investing so that you understand what you're doing and the potential for loss or any type of risk that you have of losing your money. Julie, you're muted.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. I clicked on it, but I didn't unclick. Thank you. I think that was a great answer because I think a lot of people do think it's only for the wealthy, and everybody can start when they're young, and they can start with a few dollars, and it'll grow.
Yeah. And I'd highly I can't recommend it enough that you don't have to be a millionaire to make smart decisions. And I want to impress that upon all of you. It doesn't matter how much money you have, right? If you have $100 or $100 million, making wise choices with your money, whether it be budgeting, saving, investing, making wise choices is only going to benefit your life. So I can't stress it enough that you don't have to feel like this is out of reach of you. It's not anything that, that stuff is for people with more. That's not true. take some time to really understand what finance means and what it means to help set a budget for yourself and not overspend. Those are skills that not everybody has, but everybody could benefit from having them.
That reminds me of a poll I put in another CEO chat, and I asked the kids if they had $1 million, what would they do with it? Would they go out and have a party, buy an expensive car? Would they give it to charity? Would they save it? And I was so pleased that the majority of them said the number one answer was they would save it. They would, put it in savings, the majority of it at least. And the second answer was help others in need, their family in need. And I was really pleased to see that. So let me ask, if I'm going to throw this out there, we could just have people throw it in the chat instead of filling out a poll. Or although I see that our tech guy, Javier, already put it into the poll, but I was just going to put it in the chat. Do you have a bank account? So I'll do it. You can either put it in the chat or through the poll. How many of you out there have a bank account? Let's see. We got a lot of yeses. That's good. I remember my first bank account, I went in with $10 and we started a bank account and I got to write my little, then on my jobs, I would put money in each week. It was a good lesson to learn at a young age.
Yeah.
Let's see, anybody else there? How many of you have a bank account? I see some answers coming through the chat as well through the poll, as well as the poll. Awesome.
I mean, it's you have cell phones at in elementary school these days, so I imagine a bank account's right after that, right?
Right now, you can manage your bank account on your cell phone.
That's right. I'm
going to end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, so this is good news, 70%.
Wow. Okay.
And it's okay if you don't have one yet, right? It's not, you're still young, but it's something to look forward to. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think understanding specifically with those bank accounts, there's something as simple as putting money in a savings account or a bank account. And these days, you don't earn much on a savings account. But sometimes it's just the mindset of being able to put the money away for a longer term, right? For a longer term use or need. Even if you're just saving for something that you want, right? It couldn't be something necessary. Maybe you're just saving for the PlayStation 5 that's going to come out in a year, whatever it is, the concept of saving away into a bank account is something that's a good thing to get into the habit of.
That's great. So let's go on to another question. Another attendee wants to know, how do you know what to invest money in? That's why we call you.
I don't think we have time to get all the answers there. So I will give a very brief, it depends on what your objective is, right? Now, I think most of you would probably say, well, my objective, if I'm giving you money, is to be rich, right? I want you to make me a billionaire. And that's what a lot of people would say. But for most, it's actually to make sure that their wealth is not lost first. Because when you invest money, you have the potential to lose money, right? There's risk involved in investing. So what we try to do is speak with a client about what is your objective for this money, right? Is your main objective to just grow it as much as possible and you're okay with taking on risk and losing it potentially? Or is your objective to keep it relatively safe, but grow it a consistent amount over time? And that's most of what we see, is the slow, consistent growth over time is what most clients would want so that they're not at risk of losing all their money. So for all of you to internalize, I go back to my, call it $100 example. Let's say you were given $100. You could invest that $100 and maybe you will make $200, or there's a 50% chance that you lose the entire $100. What do? Right? Do you invest it and hope you get double? Or do you just not invest it and keep it? Or, that's a decision. Everybody's answer to that question may be a little bit different. And so that's where you're seeing the differentiation between what a client wants to do with their money. So I think that's a little bit of a snippet and trying to condense it into a lot, but that's how we make a recommendation to a client and how we basically invest their money or figure out what to invest their money in.
Well, and like you said earlier, it's, there's risk involved. And I think it really comes down to how much risk can we afford to take at that point in our lives, right?
That's right.
And that's why we go to people like you who help us manage those thoughts and those ideas and help understand it so that we can have the best information to make the decision.
That's right.
So another question that's come in is, when should I start to invest?
That's another great question. It depends, right? As I've mentioned before, investing, you should start thinking about investing if you have money that's going to be there for a longer period of time, right? Not a week. A long period of time to some of you here, maybe a month is forever, right? But I mean, if it's genuinely going to be there for a longer period of time, if you've saved away money and you say, hey, you know what, I want this money to be there for 5 years so that I can buy a great car 5 years from now, maybe you want to consider investing, right? What we don't normally recommend is to invest if it's going to be something that's short term, right? If it's going to be something that you pull the money out in a short period of time, that may not be things that you want to invest because there's risk. And if stock markets sell off, or if something happens and your money is worth less than what it was initially, that could be a concern. So it's the answer, just like everything in this field, the answer is different for everyone, but you'd want to consider it if you know that you're going to have something there for a long time. And I think the best example for a lot of you will be if you get a job and they ask you if you want to open a retirement account, right? Whether that's a 401k is something you'll hear, or an IRA. Those are types of retirement accounts. And generally, those are long-term things that you're not going to pull money out of. And that's where you start investing. That's for many people, that's the first entry point into investing. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So that I was thinking about that when you were speaking, remembering my first job out of college, they asked, do you want to sign up for the 401k? And I was like, I don't know what that is. So, but it was great because each year I've been adding to it over the years, and it's going to make a nice little nest egg for me when I retire. And that's what it's for. Yeah.
And one day you can just retire and you have the money and you can kick back and enjoy it. That's the goal for all of us.
God willing, right?
That's right.
So another question that's has come in, it was really good. If you wanted to save your money, what percentage should you save of it? And again, that's a good question.
It is a good question, right? It's another very, very personal question. Depends for everybody on what your goals and objectives are. It also depends on what you have to do, right? For some people, if what you're making is only enough to sustain your absolute needs, right? If you have a family and you have to pay everything you have just to be able to sustain, sometimes it can be hard to say, well, save 20%, right? I think in an ideal world, a lot of recommendations will say, try to save somewhere around 15 to 20% of your salary, and you put them in retirement accounts, you put them in things like that. But that's not always realistic, right? It's not practical for everyone. I can speak personally, all of my early jobs, I wasn't saving that, I couldn't. And when I went to New York was way too expensive. I couldn't save 20% of anything, But we think of these things, it's not concrete, right? If we say 20%, it's not 20% and you have to do it. It's you try to strive for something like that, and you start putting things away, and you put things away, and over time, that'll grow, right? So I think that's a way to look at it. And more importantly, even than just putting the money away, is knowing that you have a safety preserve, right? Almost a safety net. So that if something happens to you, to a family member, whether it be an emergency, a car accident, some of you are probably going to start driving soon, or at the age at least where you can start driving. Let's say you have a car accident. Sometimes the deductible, if you have insurance, the deductible is going to be $500, right? Where's that going to come from? What's going to happen if you had to pay that out? So I think a lot of the times more important than just the amount that you're saving is even making sure that you have something set aside for emergencies or for things that may happen, because there's always unknowns that are going to happen.
Right. And maybe, like you said, maybe that not all that money will be invested because you can't always get to the invested money. Maybe it's just the savings, like a contingency fund, so to speak.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So one of our teachers is asking, what type of investment should you make for your children?
That's a good one. That's a really good question. generally, right, you want to, it depends on the objective, but if there's going to be, let's say, a 529, so 529 accounts are college savings accounts, kind of similar to a Florida prepaid type of thing. Obviously, all the teachers are going to know that, but 529 accounts are good because just like your retirement plans, they are tax deferred, right? When you invest in a 529 account, you actually don't have to pay taxes on any of the investments or earnings. And when it grows, you don't pay taxes on anything that gets withdrawn at the end of the day. So they're beneficial, especially if you're going to end up in, your child goes to private school or college or anything like that. That would be my first go-to to look into.
Great advice. So another person came in here and wrote, so basically you make money by making other people money. Is that right? I like that question.
Now we're getting the real questions here. Yeah. Yes, part of it. So I'll be clear in saying, we make money for financial planning and things in that realm as well, right? There's other services and features that we offer when we do planning for clients. There's all different things that we do on that front. But when we invest for clients, yes, a lot of the times what we do is we charge a fee to invest a client's money with the hope that that money is going to grow and that, we'll get paid our portion of, whatever we're charging, and the client's money is going to grow at a rate that's bigger than that. And that's the goal. If you can earn, for some clients, if they can earn 5% per year, that's a decent return. That's a decent way to grow their money. So yes, that's basically as we do. We charge money on investments and things like that, and that's mostly how we earn how we're here and how we have jobs.
Right. Well, because you have the knowledge and experience and expertise where most of us in this world don't have that. So it's worth it for people like me that if I wanted to invest, I wouldn't know what to do. So it's worth it to pay the fee to have it done properly,
yeah,
I think.
Professionally. Mm-hmm.
Professionally.
Yep.
So my next question that's come in is, how much money is the biggest account that you manage? Are you able to even say that? I
can say the size. It'll make heads turn, but we have clients that have over $500 million.
Wow.
Yeah, $500 million. Yeah, it's a lot. And what I would say is that, when I say the situation is different for every client, I think that really drives that home. Is some clients are not concerned necessarily about day-to-day expenses and things like that. And that's a reality, right? I think this goes back to something, and I don't mean to go on a rant, but it goes back to something. For me, even growing up, I personally didn't have a lot of money. I had a single mom. She worked one job. I got in college because my mom worked at the school. Like, we didn't have a lot. So I was a little bit resentful towards all of these individuals that had tons of money and this and that. And it was a hard transition. I'd say a very realistic thing for me was it was a hard transition going from that mindset to then working for people that had that amount of wealth. And some of you may feel the same way right now. And that's, that's okay. It's okay to feel like that, and it's okay to feel hurt. But the reality is a lot of these situations, these people may have been like you and me, and we have a lot of people that were entrepreneurs and built a business. And this is something that I want to stress, because people that you may have heard in the prior weeks could be business owners, could be just, people that started their own thing years ago, built it from the ground up, and sold it. And that's a lot of the big clients that we have, is they built a business and it was successful. So these are people too. Even though they are wealthy and they have very different financial situations, they are people just like you and I. They still need the advice of experts like you and I may need. So it's just important, I think, to remember that. And that's something that's kind of shifted in me, at least. But, I want everybody to know that it's, even if you feel a certain way, that's okay to feel that way. And it's okay to feel like, hey, this is out of reach. But that doesn't mean that you are less important. It doesn't mean that you are less able to impact things in this world. You're young. You have the full and complete opportunity to learn and do whatever you want. And that's why I encourage everybody to do that, because sky's the limit. That's for all of you, sky's the limit.
Thank you for saying that. I think every person on this call really should take that in and recognize that, you know, we all are special and we all have potential to do great things, and we're the same as all those billionaires out there, and we can do this, and we can learn to invest and become financially stable and hopefully successful.
That's right. That's right.
So we have another question. We have a lot of questions coming in. I hope we can get to them all. So how much money should I put in an emergency fund? And maybe you even want to give them a percentage instead of a dollar amount.
Right.
I'm just throwing that out.
No. And I think it's a good one, right? So from a financial planning standpoint, generally we'll say you should have a year and a half or so of what you make in a salary, right? But that's not, again, it's not possible for everybody to have that, but that's kind of a goal. And we use that as a gauge to say, if you're making 1.5 times what your annual salary is, if you lost your job, if you had a catastrophe or a health incident or car accident, those types of things should generally be covered under that type of savings. Now, I go in and saying it's not always possible, right? It's for many, many years, and especially in the beginning of my career, that wasn't possible. You know, it was, I earned the money I did, I spent it on the things I had to, and that's the way things go. But that's why I stress the importance of trying to be smart with the money, trying to do an emergency fund to the best of your ability, and knowing that you should probably try to save up a healthy amount that's in something safe like cash that you know is going to be there in case of a real emergency.
That's so true. I think, like you said, I love that you talked about how at the beginning of your career, you couldn't save but you got to the point where then you could save a small amount and then grow it.
Yeah. And that's the way things happen for a lot of people, right? It's not, and for some people that may not change, right? For some people, they live an entire lifetime and they save away a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, but that grows to something, right? Importantly, even a little bit of savings can grow into something meaningful. So don't be discouraged if you can't save 20% or if you can't save 1.5 times your salary. Like, that's okay. Save what you can, do the best that you can, and try to keep yourself protected.
Well, that brings us to another question, and I think you just answered it. Another attendee wanted to know if they want to be an entrepreneur and they would want to save, what would be ideal, 20% of my profit? And how do you know what that 20% is? But I think you answered that. It really comes to what their bills are and then how much can they save with an idea of growing that as time goes on.
That's right. And for a business, it becomes even more complicated, I would say, because if you're an entrepreneur and you start a business, then you have to consider things that can't go away, like the employees that you have to pay, or if your business has loans, right? You may have taken out a loan for the business and then you have to pay back that loan in interest. So there's a lot of other factors that can come in for businesses, but in that same way, businesses also have other options. Like taking out a business loan isn't always possible for an individual, right? If you're not making money, a bank may not give you a personal loan, but for a business, they may say, okay, you're earning this much, we'll give you a loan for X amount and you just have to repay it. So business finance can get a little bit more complicated, but the same general concepts can apply as far as having some sort of safety net or safety fund there.
Okay, we're getting close to out of time and I still have some more questions. So I'll get to as many as I can, and I apologize to anybody out there who I wasn't able to get to the question. Another question came in. Are there a lot of scammers in this type of work? You know, you hear about these apps that people, I mean, how do you know it's good, it's right, if someone's legitimate, if they're a scammer? Those types of questions. It's important to know.
No, it's a good question. And it's something always to be careful with your financial information, with your social security numbers. Anything that is personal and private to you or that deals with your finances, always be careful, right? There's a lot of people that will attempt to take your information. Even if, you know, some may joke and say, well, I don't have anything. They can't steal anything from zero, but don't assume that, because there's scammers that will say, oh, well, I have your social security number, so I'm going to take a loan out in your name, and then I'm going to get the money, right? So be very, very careful with your information, whether it be your social, your bank account numbers, all of those types of things. Just be very secure. We, at the bank, working at UBS, we have a huge infrastructure for safety and security to make sure that, hey, I know that if someone's calling, it's the person that I should be speaking to, right? I have to verify that, yeah, this is the person that I know, it's their voice, this is their security password, everything's okay.
That's so important. I think that's happening more and more nowadays. It seems like every day you hear about how it's growing, people getting your social security number and, stealing from you without you even knowing.
Yeah.
So I have time for one more question, and I love this question. What did you want to be when you were a kid? That came from Galaxy A20.
Well, that's a tough one. I would say for a while, probably an engineer, right?
Wow.
It was a little bit different. So Robert Morgan High School, for any of you that know, has groups basically that you go through, and I was engineering major in high school, so I got to experience it a little bit. And when I did that, I found I didn't like it as much as I thought I would, right? I enjoy Legos, clearly, but I didn't enjoy actually doing the engineering stuff as much as I thought. So it was around college, when I went from high school to college, that I started doing business, and I found I really liked numbers. And full transparency for all of you, when I was in high school and even now, I was a big computer gamer, right? So I was always on the computer and typing and this and that, and I liked processing things really quickly. And so those analytical skills that I kind of done, right? Quick thinking, and this is me trying to justify video games for years, I guess. But if I had to justify it, the analytical ability that I gained helped me out in thinking quickly, understanding finance and things like that, right? I applied kind of what those skills were to business and finance. And that passion shifted with it, right? It wasn't engineering anymore. I really did. I wanted to actually do finance, and I wanted to speak to clients, and I wanted to tell them about their credit ratings and how to do this. And that internal passion is what drove me. So it changed over time, but I can say with confidence that I really am doing a job and a career that I love.
That's wonderful. I think that's really makes you that's what makes you successful in this world, that you find a job that you love and you get to do it. Don't you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, nobody brought it up in the questions and answers, and so I'm going to bring it up. Tell us about your car right behind you. It's really cool looking. I love
That's
cool
the car
cars.
I wish I had. That's a Bugatti Lego set. That's the only engineering piece that I have left.
Oh, wow. It's a Lego set. Oh, my gosh.
It is a massive Lego set, but it's pretty large. It took probably way more time than it should have to build, probably about 3 days.
I bet a lot of our attendees out there have done some of those Lego sets of things that they love, whether it's a car or a plane. I know I have with my nephew. Yep. That's pretty awesome. Well, it's beautiful. You would never know it's Legos.
I like the car, too. I just wish it was the real thing. We're not there yet.
Do you wish that someone had told you something about your career before you started that would have been helpful to you today?
Be ready for diversity and a bunch of challenges that you wouldn't necessarily think of or expect. And maybe this is something for any job, but there's always been challenges and things that I've hit, and things that I didn't know how to tackle, or people where I didn't know who to ask, who looks like me, who can I ask this question? There was a lot of things like that it would have been nice, I think, to have some sort of mentor that you could trust and say, hey, this is what's happening. Have you been through this? And that's not always easy to find, but yeah, there's a lot of uncertain or unknown challenges that I hit that it would have been nice if somebody could have said, there's going to be a lot of diversity and things you don't know, and you're just going to have to deal with it. So.
Well, that leads me into we have 1 minute left, and I would love to have you share maybe your favorite quote or words of wisdom for our attendees today as we wrap up.
Sure. I think less a quote. I'm not huge on quotes, to be honest, but what I am big on, and I think I kind of stressed this earlier, is everybody has to believe in themselves, right? Whether you have the confidence today, don't have the confidence, whatever it is, right? Believe that if you put your mind to something and if you put the time into something, that you will succeed. Succeeding may not be what you have in your mind. There's often times when I've done something and it wasn't how I initially planned it, but know that if you really dedicate yourself to education, job, whatever it may be, that you will see success in time, right? You have to push though. You have to push, you have to work hard. I cannot stress enough that things will not be handed to most people. You may get lucky once or twice, but most things are not handed to you, right? So having that self-reliance, I think, is really, really important. It starts with all of us individually to work as hard as we can. And then when people see that, hopefully they will give you a hand and see in you what you see in you.
Those are great words to live by. Thank you. So as we finalize our CEO chat today, again, I just want to thank you, Michelangelo, for being with us today. It was a wonderful CEO chat. And to all of you who are attending, just want to remind you, I put up on the screen that next Thursday, July 2nd at 3:30, we'll be speaking with Alicia Lynch, who is the Revenue Strategy and Analytics Manager with the Miami Heat. So we look forward to seeing all of you next week. And again, thank you so much, Michelangelo. This was an awesome CEO chat, and I think everybody really learned a lot. So thank you.
Happy to be here with all of you.
Take care. Wishing you all a wonderful week. Be safe and be well. Wear your mask out there, everyone.
Billionaire, so freaking bad.